Come closer, children of Africa. Gather around the sacred fire.
In the endless deserts of Sahara, where golden sands stretch farther than the eye can see, the wind is more than air, it is memory. It watches, it listens, it remembers every promise, every betrayal, and every secret buried beneath the dunes. And among all the stories carried by the desert wind, none is spoken of with more sorrow than the story of Queen Zara, the woman who loved with all her heart, and paid for it with her soul. Long before her name became legend, Queen Zara ruled the kingdom of Sahara with wisdom, compassion, and courage. Her people adored her enemies feared her. Yet despite the wealth of her kingdom and the loyalty of her subjects, Zara carried a loneliness that no crown could ease. Every night, when the palace grew silent and the stars awakened above the dunes, Zara climbed to the highest rooftop of her palace. There, beneath the moonlight, she spoke not to servants, priests, or advisors, but to the wind itself. For as a child, Zara had discovered something extraordinary. The desert wind answered her. Sometimes it came as whispers too soft for ordinary ears. Sometimes it arrived as feelings deep within her spirit. And sometimes, it brought warnings. On this particular night, however, the wind felt different. Restless, uneasy, afraid. Zara lifted her eyes toward the dark horizon. Winds of the dunes, she whispered softly, what danger approaches my kingdom tonight? For a brief moment, all was silent. Then the breeze swirled around her, cold and urgent. He is coming. The words were faint, almost lost within the night. Before Zara could ask another question, footsteps echoed behind her. It was Toma, captain of the royal guard and one of the few people Zara trusted completely. Toma had served the royal family since Zara was a child. He had watched her grow from princess to queen, and tonight, concern filled his eyes. My queen, Toma said quietly, the stars hide behind clouds. The desert birds have abandoned their nests. Such signs rarely bring peace. Zara remained silent for a moment. Deep within her heart she felt it too. Something had begun. Something that could never be undone. The following morning, the kingdom of Sahara awoke beneath a sky stained orange by an unusual storm. The winds roared with unusual violence. Sand whipped through the streets. Merchants closed their shops. Mothers hurried children indoors. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the storm stopped. And in the silence that followed, the palace guards discovered a man lying unconscious at the kingdom's gates. He was young, wounded, and unlike anyone they had ever seen. His clothing bore symbols unknown to the people of Sahara. His hands were scarred by hardship. Yet even in unconsciousness, there was something strangely noble about him. News reached Queen Zara immediately. Ignoring the protests of her advisors, she rushed to the gates herself. The moment she saw the stranger, time seemed to slow. There was dust upon his face. Blood stained his robes. Yet his presence stirred something within her that she could not explain. As servants offered water, the stranger slowly opened his eyes. Their gazes met, and for reasons neither understood, either could look away. You, the stranger whispered weakly. You called me. Before Zara could respond, he collapsed once more. Nearby stood Nuru, the kingdom's elderly healer and Zara's most trusted spiritual advisor. Nuru's eyes narrowed. Your Majesty, he warned, this man bleeds like an ordinary traveler, but his spirit does not feel ordinary. Be cautious. But Zara had already made her decision. I saved him, she declared firmly, and until I learn his story, he shall remain under my protection. Nuru said nothing further. Yet as the stranger was carried into the palace, the old healer noticed something troubling. The wind, which had spoken faithfully to Zara for years, had fallen completely silent. Days passed, then weeks. Under the careful hands of healer Nuru, the mysterious stranger slowly regained his strength. He spoke little about his past. Whenever Zara asked where he had come from, Malik would simply smile and say, from places the desert no longer remembers. It was an answer that should have raised suspicion. Instead, it deepened Zara's curiosity. Each morning, she visited him in the palace gardens. What began as simple kindness soon became companionship, and companionship, like a hidden spring beneath desert sands, slowly blossomed into something far deeper. Together, they walked beneath swaying palm trees. They shared stories beneath golden sunsets. And for the first time in many years, laughter returned to the halls of Sahara. The servants noticed it. The guards whispered about it. Even the children of the kingdom smiled when they saw their queen happy once again. One evening, as the sky burned orange and crimson, Zara and Malik sat beside the royal fountain. The cool water reflected the setting sun like liquid fire. Tell me something, Malik said softly, his eyes fixed upon her. Do all queens speak to the wind? Zara smiled. "Only the lonely ones," she replied. "And does the wind answer?" For a brief moment, Zara hesitated. "It always has." Malik studied her carefully. "Then perhaps," he whispered, leaning closer, "you were never meant to rule alone." Zara looked away, hiding the warmth rising within her heart. For years, she had carried the burden of leadership by herself. Now, for the first time, someone seemed willing to share that burden. And though she did not yet realize it, love had already begun to take root. Yet while Zara's heart opened, the desert wind grew strangely restless. Its once gentle whispers became uneasy murmurs. Its soft evening breezes turned cold. The wind was trying to speak, but Zara, lost in the sweetness of newfound affection, no longer listened. Months passed, and soon, the entire kingdom of Sahari prepared for a celebration unlike any in its history. Queen Zara had chosen Malik as her husband. News of the royal wedding spread across neighboring kingdoms. Caravans arrived bearing gifts. Musicians filled the streets with joyful songs. Dancers rehearsed beneath moonlit courtyards. Every corner of Sahari overflowed with excitement. On the night of the ceremony, thousands gathered within the grand courtyard of the palace. Torches illuminated the sandstone walls. Golden fabrics fluttered in the evening breeze, and high above, an enormous red moon watched silently from the heavens. Queen Zara emerged dressed in flowing robes embroidered with silver threads that shimmered like starlight. Never had the people seen their queen so radiant. Malik stood waiting beside the high priest. Handsome, calm, unreadable. The ceremony began. "Queen Zara of Sahari," the high priest proclaimed, "do you accept this man as your husband, your companion, and your king?" Zara looked toward the desert horizon. Instinctively, she waited. For years, the wind had guided her during moments of great importance. But on this night, the wind said nothing. Silence. Complete silence. A faint uncertainty touched Zara's heart. Only for a moment. Then she smiled. "I do," she answered. Cheers erupted throughout the kingdom as Malik gently placed the royal crown upon her head. Something extraordinary happened. Without warning, every torch in the courtyard went out. Instantly, thousands gasped. Darkness swallowed the celebration. A cold gust swept across the gathering. Hila Nuru lowered his eyes. "The wind has turned its back," he whispered. But Zara, refusing to surrender her happiness to fear, quietly replied, "No, the wind is simply watching." How desperately she wanted to believe those words. For a time, peace returned to Sahari. The kingdom prospered, the people rejoiced, and Queen Zara believed she had finally found the happiness she had searched for all her life.
The sacred fire still burns, and so does this story.
Then came the night everything changed. The moon hid behind thick clouds. The palace corridors lay silent, and somewhere beyond the walls, the desert wind screamed. Queen Zara awoke suddenly. Her heart pounded. Beside her, the bed was empty. "Malik?" she called softly. No answer. Assuming her husband had simply wandered the palace, Zara rose and stepped into the dimly lit hallways. Barefoot, she walked through silent chambers. Then she heard it. A sound. Metal striking stone. Soft. Careful, hidden. The sound came from the royal treasury, a place forbidden to everyone except the queen. Zara's pulse quickened. Slowly she approached. The massive treasury doors stood slightly open. A narrow beam of torchlight spilled onto the floor. With trembling hands, Zara pushes the doors wider, and froze. Gold coins lay scattered across the ground. Ancient scrolls had been removed from their sacred shelves. And standing in the center of the room was Malik. For several seconds neither moved. "No." The word escaped Zara's lips as little more than a whisper. Malik slowly turned. There was no fear in his eyes, no shame, only coldness. "You were not supposed to see this," he said quietly. Zara stared at the man she loved, the man she had trusted, the man she had made king. "Why?" she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I gave you everything." Malik's expression hardened. "Exactly," he replied, "and that is why winning was so easy." Zara felt as though the ground beneath her had disappeared. "Winning?" she asked, her voice breaking. "What are you talking about?" Malik laughed, a laugh devoid of warmth. "Did you truly believe our meeting was fate? Queens should know better than anyone that trust is a luxury." Outside, the wind roared with terrifying fury. Windows shattered, curtains whipped violently through the air. At last, the wind had found its voice, but its warning had come too late. As tears streamed down her face, Queen Zara realized a painful truth. The greatest betrayals are not delivered by enemies. They are delivered by those we invite into our hearts. The night of betrayal ended with neither screams nor blood. It ended with silence. the terrible silence that follows the breaking of a human heart. Queen Zara stood motionless within the royal treasury long after Malik had disappeared into the darkness. Around her lay scattered gold, sacred scrolls, and shattered trust. But among the treasures Malik had stolen, one absence frightened her more than all the others. The Scroll of Winds was gone. For centuries, the rulers of Sahari had protected that sacred scroll. It contained ancient knowledge forbidden to ordinary men, knowledge capable of commanding forces far beyond human understanding. As dawn painted the desert sky crimson, Queen Zara emerged before her warriors. Gone was the woman who had whispered love beneath moonlit gardens. Before them now stood the Storm Queen, clad in armor of silver and gold. Her eyes carried both sorrow and fire. "People of Sahari," she called, her voice echoing across the palace courtyard. "A crime has been committed against not only your queen, but against the soul of this kingdom. The man we welcomed into our home has stolen what must never leave these walls. Today, we ride not for revenge, but for justice." The warriors raised their spears. "Zara! Zara! Storm Queen!" And so began the greatest pursuit in Sahari's history. Across endless dunes they rode, through scorching heat and rising winds, following the fading tracks of the man who had stolen a queen's heart and betrayed an entire kingdom. Far ahead, Malik rode alone. His horse struggled against the strengthening storm. Again and again, he glanced over his shoulder. For the first time since his deception began, fear had entered his heart. By sunset, the desert itself had turned against Malik. The winds howled, the sands shifted without warning. Ancient rock formations seemed to move like living things. At last, within the shadow of Black Canyon, Zara's warriors surrounded him. Exhausted and defeated, Malik was dragged before the queen. For several moments neither spoke. The desert held its breath. Zara looked upon the man she had once loved, and in that moment she saw not a monster, but a stranger wearing the face of someone she once trusted. "Why?" Zara asked quietly. "Tell me the truth. Was any of it real?" Malik lowered his head. Then slowly he smiled. "Does it matter now?" The answer struck Zara harder than betrayal itself. Because somewhere deep within her soul, she realized she would never know. Anger surged through her. "You came to destroy my kingdom. You lied. You stole. You betrayed everyone who welcomed you. Tell me why I should spare you." Malik lifted his eyes defiantly. "Because if you kill me, you will spend the rest of your life loving a ghost." Tears filled Zara's eyes, but they did not fall. "Death is mercy," she whispered, "and mercy is something you no longer deserve." Slowly, Zara drew an ancient ceremonial blade. Then, raising her hands toward the heavens, she began speaking words forbidden for generations. Words found only within the sacred scroll of winds. The desert trembled, the sky darkened, the wind screamed. Suddenly, sand erupted around Malik, spiraling upward like a living storm. "Until the wind forgives you," Zara declared, her voice carried by thunder, "you shall walk these deserts nameless, restless, and alone. Neither life nor death shall claim you." Malik screamed as the storm consumed him. His body vanished into the swirling sands, and then there was only silence. The people of Sahari celebrated their queen's return. Drums sounded, songs filled the streets, and fires burned throughout the night. Yet inside the palace, there was no celebration. Queen Zara had returned victorious, but victory felt strangely empty. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. The laughter that once filled the palace never returned. One afternoon, as Zara crossed the royal courtyard, a small child approached her. In trembling hands, the child held a single desert flower. "For you, my queen," the child said shyly. Zara smiled gently and accepted the gift. But before she could speak, a sudden gust of wind swept through the courtyard. The flower slipped from her fingers and disappeared into the sky. Zara watched silently. For the first time in her life, the wind no longer spoke to her. Perhaps it had abandoned her. Or perhaps it was mourning with her. Years passed. Queen Zara ruled wisely until the final days of her life. But those closest to her often claimed that she changed. Some nights, servants heard her speaking to someone in empty rooms. Others swore they saw her standing alone upon the palace rooftop, whispering apologies into the darkness. Then one day, Queen Zara simply disappeared. No body was found. No farewell was left behind. Only an open balcony and the sound of wind. Meanwhile, deep within the endless deserts beyond Sahari, travelers began sharing strange stories. Stories of an old wanderer dressed in torn royal garments, a lonely man walking endlessly through sandstorms, a man who asked every traveler the same question, "Has the wind forgotten me yet?" No one knew his name, no one knew where he came from, but all who met him agreed on one thing: his eyes carried unimaginable regret. Even now, generations later, the people of Sahari still tell this story beside evening fires. Griots sing of the queen who commanded the desert. Children listen with wide eyes, and elders bow their heads in quiet remembrance. Some say Queen Zara became one with the wind. Others believe she still wanders the dunes searching for answers she never found. As for Malik, many insist he still walks, alone, waiting, regretting. Perhaps that is the true nature of betrayal. The betrayed suffer for a season, but the betrayer carries the desert within forever. And so the wind remembers Queen Zara, not because she was powerful, not because she was a queen, but because she dared to love completely, in a world where love itself can become a storm. And now, dear listener, the wind asks you a question. If you were Queen Zara, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven Malik, or would you have chosen the storm? If this story touched your heart, help us keep Africa's stories alive. Subscribe to Moonfur Stories. Share this story with someone who loves Africa. And leave a comment telling us what lessons stayed with you. Because tomorrow night, when the moon rises, and the fire burns once again.
Until we gather again around the sacred fire, go in peace and may wisdom guide your path.